I shall leave this office with regret at not completing my term, but with gratitude for the privilege of serving as your president for the past 5.5 years.
On August 8, 1974, President Richard Nixon cemented himself in American history as the first United States president to resign from office. He had finally ended his controversial term, which was marked by revolutionary deception and illegality. Before Nixon's administration, the position of president was highly revered, a perception that was shattered by the American people's reaction to Nixon's misdeeds. The drastic loss of trust in the highest office of the country ultimately forced the government to create reforms that would strengthen executive accountability and overall government transparency.
I pledged in my campaign for the presidency to end the war in a way that we could win the peace. I have initiated a plan of action which will enable me to keep that pledge.
At the start of his first term, Nixon promised to achieve peace with honor in Vietnam, and the highlight of his presidency was his foreign policy. However, the Vietnam War is considered to be one of the few conflicts the U.S. side lost. Throughout his first term, Nixon faced numerous anti-war protests that demanded he end unnecessary U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Despite his nation's support of a withdrawal, Nixon's fear of the spread of communism pushed him to continue U.S. involvement. He chose to begin the menu bombings, secretly targeting the neutral country of Cambodia. The discovery of the military operation sparked a wave of mistrust of the government among the people. Backlash against Nixon's decision prompted Congress's attempt to regain the people's trust by enacting the War Powers Act of 1973. It requires all presidents to notify Congress whenever they wish to deploy troops and limits the duration of soldiers' time abroad without congressional approval. This particular act highlights the need for reform in response to Nixon's deception. The War Powers Act set a precedent of executive transparency that shaped the future of military endeavors. This demonstrates how public distrust caused by Nixon's choice ultimately led to a lasting reform that restored faith in the government. Amid declining public trust, the Pentagon Papers exposed the deceptions of Nixon's predecessor, Lyndon B. Johnson, throughout the Vietnam War. Nixon's paranoia caused him to fear a leak of similar nature that would expose his own deception. So he turned to covert operations again, this time in the domestic sphere.
I want it implemented on a thievery basis. Goddamn, get in and get those files. Blow the safe and get it.
In his office with Harry Bob Hadelman, Nixon's chief of staff, he was convinced to attempt to steal files from the Brookings Institution, a liberal-leaning think tank. The files Nixon wanted to retrieve described Johnson's foreign policy regarding Vietnam. Hadelman convinced Nixon to use them to defame Johnson and abate the severity of his own mistakes by comparison. Tapes released during the Watergate trial revealed that Nixon wanted his men to, quote, get in and get those files. In an interview with CNN, former White House counsel John Dean revealed that Charles Colson, another White House aide, planned a firebombing as a diversion to retrieve the files. While the plan was never carried out, people reacted with shock and outrage, as trust in the presidency eroded further. No official of such a high ranking had ever been caught explicitly ordering an illegal action. To repair executive accountability, Congress responded with the Ethics in Government Act, passed in 1978. Addressing Nixon's illegal order, the act provided a comprehensive guide of ethics for all members of the government. This directly highlights how Nixon's questionable order caused Congress to create standards for government ethics that strengthened executive accountability and restored the nation's confidence.
Because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
The aforementioned tapes were released in a trial regarding the infamous Watergate scandal, where 5 men attempted to break into the Democratic National Committee's headquarters, the Watergate Hotel.
I'm sticking by Nixon. I think it'll be proved that he's innocent. I sincerely believe that.
Though Nixon was not suspected of being behind the burglary, people weren't sure their president was doing everything in his power to bring justice to the 5 men caught at Watergate. This doubt shifted the focus of Americans and the Watergate Investigative Committee onto the president, leading to the politically harrowing era known as the Watergate scandal. As part of the trial, Alexander Butterfield, a White House aide, was called to testify before the Watergate Committee. He revealed that Nixon had the Oval Office bugged and that all conversations held there were recorded. The committee received a subpoena requiring Nixon to release the tapes, and after repeated refusals, he released edited transcripts to the public. Confidence in the presidency wavered, as the country wondered whether the transcripts were entirely accurate and called for the full tapes release. Nixon eventually complied, and on October 23, 1973, the White House tapes were submitted to the courts. Although he released the tapes, notable gaps remained, including an 18.5-minute section. This chipped away at the president's credibility even further, leading to more criticism and suspicion. One clip, called "The Smoking Gun," showcased Nixon telling Haldeman to stop the FBI investigation.
They do is to get them to stop the firefight. And they say the only way to do that is a White House instruction. And that it's got to be in Helms and, what's his name? Walter. And the proposal would be that Erwin and I call them in. All right, fine. And say, how do you call them in? Well, we protected Helms from one hell of a lot of things. That's what everything is. This is Hunt. That'll uncover a lot of legal scat. There's a hell of a lot of things. And then we just feel that this would be very detrimental to have this thing go any further.
Despite public claims of full support for the Watergate Committee, other tapes revealed Nixon's covert attempts to cover up the incident. He even attempted to fire Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox, causing his Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General to resign. This series of events is known as the Saturday Night Massacre. As the trial went on, people began to call for the president's impeachment, especially after discovering the shocking contents of the smoking gun tape. Nixon saw his support slowly fading away, and on August 8, 1974, he resigned. The next day, Vice President Gerald Ford took his place, and his first order of business was pardoning his predecessor. Nixon's administration left faith in the government in shambles, prompting Congress to implement several reforms. The Ethics in Government Act created the position of independent counsel to prevent incidents like the Saturday Night Massacre. The Hughes-Ryan Amendment to the Foreign Assistance Act was enacted in 1974, requiring all presidents to report all CIA covert activities to Congress. The Freedom of Information Act, passed in 1978, allows any U.S. citizen to request federal government information. These reforms emphasize the importance of executive accountability and government transparency. The hidden events of Nixon's presidency, including secret Cambodia bombings, an ordered break-in, and the Watergate scandal, offer one conclusion. The deception of his administration dissolved faith in the presidency, forcing Congress to implement significant reforms that increased government transparency, accountability, and overall honesty. Despite the short-term destruction of public trust, Nixon's administration ultimately pushed Congress to create lasting policies that are influential to this day.